Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, verses 118 to 123 of Surah Hud, chapter 11. And we will end Surah Hud today. The Quran helps to strengthen the hearts of Momineen. These are the references, and this is our contact in case there is any query or question regarding this presentation or all our previous presentations. Recap of verses 110 to 117, which were covered last Sunday. Allah sent His messengers with the book to help mankind remove their mutual differences so that peace and mutual harmony develops among the people, leading to freedom from fear and grief. The messenger Musa also came with the book based on Wahi of Allah. However, many people did not take advantage of this and remained suffering from their doubts and inner dissonances. This meant that differences remained in place. The law of requital continued to bring forth the consequences of the deeds of various nations, which thus suffered due to their wrong conduct. Momineen take advantage of the guidance of Wahi and follow the program of Allah towards the establishment of the system of Deen. They are cautioned not to make any compromise on the Quranic values. And this is an important point on which Quran emphasizes all along, that once you have come to this path, then do not make any compromises, because then you will lose the benefit of following this path. They are told to keep in mind the permanent value that good deeds replace the harmful effects of bad actions in life. Allah then makes it clear to all that if people follow good and keep reforming their society, then they will avoid any destructive consequences in this life. It is people who do injustice to themselves, inviting their own ruin. Summary of these verses, which we are going to cover today, 118 to 123. The aim of the Quran is to help establish the system of Deen in the human world. It invites the whole of mankind to remove their mutual differences so that they can live a life free from fear and grief. And Quran emphasizes a lot on removing differences, because differences, wherever differences exist, even within the family, the life becomes very difficult for its members. The purpose of the creation of man with choice and intent is to help him to bring out his latent potentials under the guidance of Wahi, so that he can develop himself and thus live life at a far higher level than the animalistic level. If we decide to ignore the guidance of Wahi, then man cannot escape the evil effects of following the wrong paths of life, and thus will fail to develop himself and will end up in ruin. It will also mean that he will live life at an animalistic level in the world. I put animalistic level under inverted commas because it is not literally animal level, because still human beings have intellect and reasoning, and they do strive a lot to work for their own material successes, and as a result, they create problems. The accounts of the previous messengers of Allah are shared in the Quran as an instruction by illustrating the kinds of opposition faced by them, and thus to strengthen the hearts of the Jamaat-e-Momineen, so that they remain firm on this path and know that their efforts will produce results in the future at some point in time. By understanding the functioning of the law of requital, they can tell their opponents that they intend to remain firmly on this program, and the results in the future will demonstrate to all who is on haq and who is on batil. Let us go to the first verse of today's presentation, 118, why man with choice and intent. That why man is created with choice and intent. Why couldn't we have a creation called man without choice and intent? وَلَوْ شَاءَ رَبُّكَ لَجَعَلَ النَّاسَ أُمَّةً وَاحِدَةً وَلَا يَزَالُونَ مُخْتَلِفِينَ. From this, someone may have this thought that why did Allah put such a process in place that people oppose haqq and truth? And in this way, mutual tussle keeps arising. Why did He not do this, that all human beings should have followed one path? So, as has been stated previously, it was not at all difficult for Allah that, like other things in the universe, He could have created human beings also without choice and intent. And consequently, they would all have been obliged to tread on one single path. But He did not do it like this. And that is something which has to provoke a lot of thoughts and questions in our mind. Because if we come to grips with that, then we understand the creation of our own self with choice and intent. And it is important because then we are more convinced of our own creation and we are more firm-footed on the guidance of the Quran. He created man with choice and intent, because of which they differ in every way with each other. Now, over here, I put down some slides after going through this issue in some detail, and I would like to have some feedback from our members that if these are the only points, or do we have more points which we can add to this analysis? Verse 118, analyzing choice plus intent a bit further. These thoughts do cross the minds of many people who suffer at the hands of other human beings, i.e., due to the wrong systems in the world. However, when they come into a position of being able to change the system or are invited to the Quran, most wish to conform with the former system which has benefited them. The issue for us to analyze is that if choice and intent is not given to man, then the creation of Allah becomes meaningless. And the Quran states that Allah does not create anything without haqq. And that is an important point at the back of our mind, that there are problems in the world, and these problems can only be resolved if we have human hands behind the solutions. And for that, Quran is providing us guidance. That is, it says that you come together, create a Jamaat Momineen, and then work for those objectives which are laid down by the Quran within its permanent values. Why do we need to understand the reason for the creation of human beings in the world? And here I've got some points to share. Firstly, not knowing this means that if the reason for this exists and we are not interested in it, then we are not using that cognitive side which needs to have this answer in order to manifest its potential. The Quran has summed it up very succinctly. Inna hadainahu sabila imma shakiram wa imma kafura. That Allah has provided the guidance. Now it is up to us whether we want to be mashkur or we want to bring out our latent potentials and do constructive deeds, or we want to reject it. And we know that kufr is opposite of iman. So shakiran over here means those who wish to become Momineen. Guidance is provided. Next, it is his choice to select a path in life. Next point, secondly, there is a precise logic behind human creation in which Allah has provided humans with a cognitive mechanism which has the potential to create new life within us through the use of our intellect and reasoning by using the Quranic value system. We have gone over this concept of new life in the light of the Quran, but I thought to put it again over here so that it becomes part of analysis of this particular verse. It is at the level of our intellect and reasoning that we question the issues of our existence, problems in the world, etc., and then try to find solutions. Because when we think about the problems and leave it there, that means we haven't really analyzed it properly. So if we think of the problem, then it is our duty to further question it and then try to find an answer to it. It might take years, doesn't matter. It doesn't cost anything, but knowing that their problem exists, it is our duty to question it and then try to find out the solution. Continuing to the next slide. Need for new life. What do we mean by new life? If we look at the process which we use to make decisions in our daily life using our I, that is me, that is my sense of being, we can see that the world we have collectively created around us is the product of this thinking process. Hence, all the problems, development, inventions, technical progress, etc., are owed to the decision making of this I. I have put technical progress under inverted commas because sometimes we get carried away as if technical progress has changed the basic I. It doesn't. It makes no difference whether we have AI or we can go to Mars or we can go to other galaxies. Still, we will stay the same human beings possessing an I, and that I is subjected to the law of requital. This I is experiencing its life through the physical body which it inhabits, and this life is dependent on the way it is making these decisions and then acting on these in the outer world. If this I becomes dissatisfied with the world it creates, that is, if I become dissatisfied with the world which is around us, created by other eyes or other human beings, then I should think about it, i.e., it is unhappy with its present life. Now, this is where important to compare the new life under inverted commas and the present life under inverted commas. That it needs to start thinking differently within the confines of the system of being. Because if the present life does not even think about the problems and is not concerned about the problems in the world, then essentially this present life is quite happy to stay in the present life. This very change in understanding will lead to a different cognitive path of life, and once it gets onto it using the Quranic value system, then it will acquire a new life through own efforts. So if the present life does not want a new life, then there is no new life for it. So this is what the Quran is asking us, that you should be dissatisfied with the man-made systems. And that is the state of your present life. Now you want to have a different system, a system of deen within the Quranic values. Then understanding that and coming to that path is the first step towards acquiring new life. And that is what Quran calls Iman. And then, of course, with solid deeds, this new life becomes strengthened with the passage of time. Going back to the verse itself, the third point relates to the issue of understanding the mind-body relationship. If we do not acknowledge our cognitive side, which makes us aware of the existence of a self, we will always exist at the animalistic level. If we look around, the criterion for success in a non-deen world is always predicated on material successes. If our self is based on a material outlook, then where is the life in it? Because everything material does not have life. If we want new life, and if we claim to have new life, then we should be talking about life. And life exists with Allah, because He is Hayyul Qayyum, He gives life, and He is alive Himself. Creating a thought process or a model of Allah based on the concept which is given in the Quran, that is the starting point of acquiring Iman. Then where is the life in it? I.e., it is contented with the material world and its attractions. Because if it is concentrated on that, then essentially it is thinking that life will end with death. And that is why all the accumulations and all the attractions and getting lost in this world, not thinking of the hereafter, and creating problems for fellow human beings. While the need for a self or the hereafter does not even cross such minds. So if hereafter does not exist in that mind, if that I is not even concerned about finding out that what exists in the hereafter and what value system will take me over there, then that self has not essentially acquired new life. It is preferring to exist in the present life. Now, next slide is continuing further. Fourthly, despite being a tiny speck as compared to the size of the universe, in order for man to fully appreciate the true purpose for the existence of his cognitive potentials, he needs to know the operating domain of his thoughts. Now, why did I put down these thoughts? Because physically, we are very tiny as compared to, for example, Earth or the universe. But in terms of our thoughts, we are encompassing the whole of the known universe, even at this point in time. These can encompass the so far known universe and have the capacity to keep on expanding the field of view. And that is where our success lies. That is where our understanding lies. That is where that new life lies. That what is the power of our thoughts? The world which we have created around us is the power of our thoughts. It is a reflection of the strength of our thoughts. What is the limit of the grasp of our thought? Scientists also ponder like this, that is without the Quran. But they cannot relate this to the potential of the human self for an eternal life, because their thoughts are only confined to this physical life. They don't think that there is a higher purpose to human existence. It is by understanding Allah's creation and its purpose from the Quran that we humans can give meaning to the universe, its relation to our existence here. And Allah wants us to give meaning to this verse. And for giving that meaning, Quran helps us. There are numerous verses on metaphysics side of the universe, and we need to go through them as well, and hopefully we'll go through them as we make progress. And then the connection of the developed self to the life of the hereafter. Fifthly, Allah is drawing our attention to the importance of providing choice and intent, and then making available His wahi for guidance that this new form of creation of a new life is placed within the reach of each one of us. The fact is that we are here and our death is staring us in the face. Hence, if we feel the need for guidance, not out of fear of death, and that is very important. Quran does not want us to have any fear of any kind. Totally become free from that fear, and a stage can come where our understanding reaches that level of accomplishment or development where the fear of death does disappear. After becoming dissatisfied with the man-made systems, then we need to bring out our latent potentials to which our attention is drawn by Allah, i.e. to His attributes, to manifest these in the human world. Removing our own dissonances. Sixthly, by stating in the verse that Sha'a Rabbuka la jalan nasa ummatan wahidatan. Allah has drawn our attention to this point that this unity, that is unity between mankind or among mankind, is possible if we strive for this in the world. So it is not meant to have differences. If we human beings make an effort, then these differences gradually can be removed. At least these differences can be removed to that extent where they have harmonious relationship and they can coexist without creating problems for each other. The formula is called Rububiyat as a system. Understand and acquire this attribute of Rabb and then start to work together with this aim in mind. As a precondition, create a self which has its differences removed with those who also share the same goal in their life. So at a stage one is that we remove our own differences individually, then create a desire within us to have a world without differences so that there are no conflicts and chaos in the world. And then join with those where the hearts get united. Because unity of that heart, within that unity of hearts lies the proof that this formula can function. The issue for us is that we cannot explain this until we make ourselves free from our own inner dissonances. Next point is, once differences become removed at the micro scale, and it is a micro scale because these are very refined psychological feelings and ideas and thoughts which create problems within our eye. Then the self so developed will understand the newly acquired psyche because it will become an evidence in itself to us that this formula does work and can explain to others its outlook, vision, functioning under the Quranic value system, and above all, the pleasure of acquiring a dissonance-free self. This should be our aim all the time if we are already not there, that we need a dissonance-free self. And why did I put down this point? So that we can explain to others. Because if myself is dissonance-free and I understand my own thought process, then it is easier for me to explain it to others. We have discussed some important aspects of a developed self in previous presentations. For example, we said patience is important, which is called sabr, steadfastness, istiqamat, inner unity of purpose, understanding of the Quranic value system, uncompromising resolve, and never to compromise on Quranic values. Complete trust in the laws of Allah because we know that success will come if we stay on this path. Ability to refer back to the Quran on every crossroad of life. Very important. Life is about making choices. Wherever choices come in our life on a daily basis, we see what is the command of the Quran. What does Allah say in this matter? Hearts united with other Momineen. Now, over here, what I've done is I've selected some pictures to make this presentation a bit more colorful and interesting. And why should we make a choice to stay human and acquire new life? Do we wish to be like them? And if we wish to be like them, then we should remember sheepdog as well. And or do we wish to be like them? Or do we wish to be like them? It's just a matter of different species and different colors. And if we wish to be like them, then we should also remind that there will be someone on the horseback to drive us around. And if we wish to be a bit faster than cattle, and then we should remember that technology will be chasing us, or with the leash in the hand of a master. And do we wish to be lost in a crowd? No individuality. We have to stand out because each one of us is a very important human being. Unbridled emotions. What do they achieve? Nothing. Just get together, some emotional hype up, and that's the end of it. And where does humanity stand? This is, we know this triangle of needs from Abraham Maslow. And he said that first physiological needs, safety needs, belonging needs, esteem needs, and self-actualization. And there is no hereafter in it. And this is what human beings will achieve without the guidance of Allah. Now, I took out this slide from Google, and I thought, what does the meaning of life appear on Google? And this slide is quite interesting. The goal of human life to inquire, no achievement yet, a permanent solution to the real problems of life, permanent relief from all miseries. That is, again, it is a self-centered thing. What about the miseries of others? An eternal life of bliss, peace, and happiness. Therefore, inquire. There's no achievement here yet. The root cause of all causes, the source of everything. Then what? So this is the limitation of human beings. And let us see what Quran says. This is a verse from Surah Najm. وَأَنَّا إِلَىٰ رَبِّكَ الْمُنْتَهَى. That to your Rabb is the final destination, aiming for rububiyyat. And that should be our purpose. And that once that becomes a purpose, then essentially we are on an infinite path of self-development. Now let us go to the next verse, 119. Our choices in life can decide our destination. إِلَّا مَنْ رَحِمَ رَبُّكَ وَلِذَلِكَ خَلَقَهُمْ وَتَمَّتْ كَلِمَاتُ رَبِّكَ لَأَمْلَأَنَّ جَهَنَّمَ مِنَ الْجِنَّةِ وَالنَّاسِ أَجْمَعِينَ. The procedure by which to avoid these differences is that people obey the laws of Allah. By obeying the law of one being who holds authority, differences automatically vanish. This is the rahmat of Allah that He has also bestowed such a law. The very aim of creating man in this mold was that by using his choice and intent, by obeying the law of Allah, by removing his mutual differences, to live as one ummah. This will assuredly ultimately come to pass. But during this period, those people who desire to follow their emotions, instead of utilizing their knowledge and vision, they will enter the hell of destruction and ruin. Whether they are from civilized urban habitations or are living life as Bedouins in the desert. This is our immutable law, and accounts from history provide evidence of how this is continuing to be proven to be true. This part of the verse, لَأَمْلَأَنَّ جَهَنَّمَ مِنَ الْجِنَّةِ وَالنَّاسِ أَجْمَعِينَ, is normally translated that Allah will fill up Jahannam with jinn and ins. And the point we should remember is that human beings themselves fill up the hell through their own deeds. Some reflections on this verse. Continuing from the issue of the existence of differences and their serious negative consequences, the Quran here invites us to the rahmat of Allah, i.e. to His laws and their protective and nourishing aspects in our life. Two divine attributes are noted here, i.e. Rahim and Rabb. Once we have come to grips fully with the importance of our creation and learned the procedure and process of self-development for our guidance, the Quran has placed our importance before us. That is, Quran all along puts our own importance before our own eye, before our own self. This rahmat for growth and success is made available to us. All along, Allah invites us to the importance of this realization that we are not left alone. All that we need to know is to grow a higher level of cognitive eminence where we come to grips with our significance as possessors of choice and intent. Just look at the language of the wording used here. وَلِذَلِكَ خَلَقَهُمْ. They are created for this specific aim to be provided with rahmat, inviting us to come and get it, as it is within our reach. Only if we use our intellect and reasoning. I is addressed here. And a number of verses, numerous verses in the Quran, each one of us is addressed collectively as well as individually. After this, it warns us that if we do not do this, then there is nothing for us, as we will fail to be attracted by the loftiness and eminence of our cognitive potentials, and will not meet the criterion of the hereafter. Hell has plenty of space for all those who reject the guidance of Allah. Next is reference to past accounts is to strengthen our hearts. Verse 120. وَكُلًّا نَقُصُّ عَلَيْكَ مِنْ أَنْبَاءِ الرُّسُلِ مَا نُثَبِّتُ بِهِ فُؤَادَكَ وَجَاءَكَ فِي هَٰذِهِ الْحَقُّ وَمَوْعِظَةٌ وَذِكْرَىٰ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ. O Rasool, we informed you about the accounts of previous nations and previous Anbiya for this reason, so that your heart becomes strengthened. In this Quran, we have explained all realities in a clear style. These realities and their ethical values remind the Momineen of this fact, what the aim of their life is and how it will be achieved. Accounts for the past help transform our present, which impacts our future. Here the Quran comes to the Momineen to reassure them that the whole aim of its guidance is to help them to progress towards the establishment of the system of being. Firstly, look at the accounts of the previous Anbiya who went through similar challenges and hardships. This should provide hope and expectation that things will ultimately go in support of the Momineen. Secondly, here education and training is being extended to them through the messenger in terms of helping them to transform their psyche, which strengthens their resolve on this path of theirs. If historical accounts provide evidence that Momineen were helped in the past, then this immutable law of Allah is still applicable, as Allah is Al-Hayyul Qayyum. Hayyu means that He is living, Qayyum means He is established and going to be staying like that. Just imagine the strength of the words used here, Nusabbitu bihi fuadaka, that Allah is saying that He is the one who is going to strengthen their hearts. So addressed directly to the messenger, but applicable for all times. Here is the summary. Here comes Haqq to provide wa mau'izatum wa zikra lil mu'mineen, that is instruction containing good for them and to help them to raise their eminence as mu'mineen. Verse 121 to 122, the law of requital is based on evidence. وَكُلِّ الَّذِينَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ آمَنُوا عَلَىٰ مَكَانَاتِكُمْ إِنَّا عَامِلُونَ وَانْتَظِرُوا إِنَّا مُنْتَظِرُونَ. O Rasool, in light of these reasonings and evidences and historical facts, you should also let your opponents know, as previous Anbiya had declared, that you keep working on your program, we will keep working on our program. After this, wait for the outcomes, we will wait too. The whole thing is to give time for the good deeds, for the Amal Saleh to manifest their results in the outer world, and it takes time. Verses 121 to 122, the law of requital favors Momineen. When we make an effort in life, we look for quick outcomes. Ideally, this urge is kept within us. If we do not have any hope of getting any results in our life, then we are unlikely to pursue the path. And human beings do want tangible results in the outer world. But on this path, tangible results take time to materialize. So that is the point which Quran is drawing our attention to. However, this is possible in the world of religion, that people practice rituals without expecting results in this life, because those rituals are not going to manifest any results outside, because people know that by, for example, carrying out a certain ritual of, let's say, reading something or bowing before an idol made of a stone, they also know no result is going to be produced. But they have some kind of a vague idea that something will happen in their favor, may not be in this life, but in the hereafter. But Quran draws our attention towards the tangible outcomes. The Quran points to this urge of ours and provides us with the solution for dealing with it. Here the Quran has asked the Momineen to announce convincingly that the path pursued by them will bear results once their efforts and deeds have reached the point for their manifestation as per the law of requital. Hence, they are not in a hurry to get quick results. Not being in a hurry and developing that lack of urgency in our mind, like people have in pursuit of material gains, is part of developing ourselves. They also tell their opponents who do not have Iman in the way of Allah that their path will also produce adverse consequences, as their conduct is against the laws of Allah. Just wait a bit longer. Momineen have to work on two paths. One is to look at the consequences of what they are doing together themselves, and also look at the world around them, that what exactly they are doing and where do they stand vis-a-vis the law of requital. Why did the Quran feel the need to point to this fact? And these kind of verses have appeared in other places as well. We have gone through them previously as well. The reason is that Quran is strengthening our heart, because this is the process of educating ourselves, training ourselves, and developing ourselves. That is to become convinced of this fact that having acquired Iman and doing solid deeds, and by coming together, we have to wait for the results a bit longer. The reason is that Batil is well established and possesses power, and Batil at this point in time controls human affairs in the physical domain. And we can see that if we look at the world around us, there is no deen anywhere. So what is happening is that it is Batil which is controlling the world. So if we are on that haq, then we have to give time for that seed of haq to grow and to germinate first, and then it start growing into a big fruit tree. This is visible to Momineen as well, who are apparently weak in the physical domain. I put it as inverted commas because once we are in this path, we are not weak, because this path is multiplied by an infinite being, Allah. And that is something which we should keep in mind, that His laws are fully supporting our efforts and do not possess any physical power to bring about any tangible change. Apparently, it looks that nothing is happening, but actually, if we look and check it in the light of the Quran, we can see that things are progressing forward. However, their path in the initial phases of striving for deen is related more to their self-development. Time of respite is for self-development. Expanding this aspect a bit further on, the Quran has pointed to an important aspect in terms of strengthening of the psyche of Momineen in the world. It tells Momineen that since they have entered into a covenant with Allah, and this covenant is based on the acceptance of Iman by them, in which the life of the hereafter is an intrinsic part, hence they need not be impatient on this path of theirs. Because why should we be impatient on this path? Because time is not going to end with our death. Even if our individual death arrives early, as long as we are working together, some new people will join in, and this caravan will keep progressing forward. As long as this caravan has an infinite aim in front of it, it should never become frustrated or desperate or hopeless. Iman in the reality of the existence of the hereafter means that time is now on their side. However, it does not mean slowing down their effort. Because in our physical life, people do slack, people do slow down, and they start wasting time if they know they have a plenty of time or a date for completion of a certain assignment. But over here, we are working for Allah, and over here, there's no question of slowing down. We should do our best. It means to continue their efforts with full focus and vigor, all the while keeping in mind that their efforts will never go to waste, because the permanent value is wasbir fa inna Allaha la yudhi'u ajra al-muhsinin. That be patient, be firm, because Allah will never ever let the deeds of Muslims go waste. Just as in our physical life, where we have a balanced diet together with regular exercise, we will enjoy a healthy life. This applies similarly to the life of ourself. If we subject it to those laws which deal with the development of the self, then this will be manifested in its development with tangible signs which can be checked by using the Quranic criterion for a developed self. One sign given here is the confidence with which Momineen can tell the opponents, you follow your path and we will follow ours. Let time prove who ultimately succeeds and who ends up in ruin. Next verse, 123, we need to look for precision in the universe. وَلِلَّهِ غَيْبُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَإِلَيْهِ يُرْجَعُ الْأَمْرُ كُلُّهُ فَاعْبُدْهُ وَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَيْهِ وَمَا رَبُّكَ بِغَافِلٍ عَمَّا تَعْمَلُونَ. This challenge of yours is based on the absolute law of that Allah, for the completion of whose defined program everything in the highs and lows of the universe is busily engaged in functioning, and the decision for all matters takes place according to His law. Hence, this cannot happen that for the completion of that program of his, for which you have arisen, it does not become successful. Therefore, keep obeying his laws totally and maintain full trust in the fruition of their outcomes. Remember, your Rabb does not remain uninformed about the action of anyone so that its outcome might result in not becoming established. Let us look at some aspects further on this about this verse, further reflections. Here in this verse, Allah has provided reassurance to Momineen to acquire a very high understanding about the realities of life and to keep in mind that what is unseen at an earlier part of their journey will gradually become manifested as they keep progressing on this path of Allah. This is because His laws are firmly established and take precedence over man-made laws. We should never ever think that the man-made laws will continue dominating. If some people stand up, they arise and work for the system of being. Then those laws which are applicable to Jamaat-e-Momineen, those become effective. The only condition is that human beings with Iman need to take the initiative and start to head towards Deen. Just see the wording of the verse, وَعَلَيْهِ يُرْجَعُ الْأَمْرُ كُلَّهُ. There is no exception here. That is all, whatever happens in the world is referred back to Allah's laws, i.e. every Amr goes back to Him, to His laws which are firmly established. We have gone through many aspects in this context in our previous talks. What we need to do is to obey these laws and through continuous study, adherence and practice, strive to keep acquiring higher and higher self-development. And this will lead to firmness in the trust in these laws and of course firm trust in Allah. فَعْبُدْهُ وَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَيْهِ. And we know abad means to obey Him, to obey His laws, tawakkal, and then have a full trust in that. And this conviction takes time to develop. We cannot acquire this conviction in 1 day or 2 days, but it can take few years to develop within our psyche. وَمَا رَبُّكَ بِغَافِلٍ عَمَّا تَعْمَلُونَ. This is the last part of the verse. I thought to put some thoughts on it. We have seen that all along Allah reinforced at this point that nothing goes unnoticed in the human world. The important point here in this part of the verse for our education is the use of Rabb first, which draws our attention to the issue of rububiyyat in the world and the universe. Second is our intended destination is not some place or some material reward awaiting us at the end of worldly struggles. It is our self-development through our striving in the cause of Allah, which is in essence our own cause. And that is an important point. I recently shared a motivational clip from Allama Parvez, where he says that if you want to enjoy this life, if you want to have a higher purpose in life, then have a purpose which is never achieved, so that that purpose continues in the hereafter as well. So on the basis of that very purpose, which does not end in this life, you will be given an eternal life just to go to the next life to fulfill it. And self-development is such a wonderful purpose that the Quran has given us when it says that you should develop yourself and you are on the Sirat-e-Mustaqim and this path never ends. And the path of self-development doesn't end. The human consciousness has no limit. It keeps expanding as we keep adding more knowledge to it. And it becomes an evidence right in this world and we experience it. It is not something otherworldly. Part of this process of self-development is to remain aware of the development of other human beings, which is the acquired responsibility of this divine attribute. And another point which Allama said in that clip is that if your purpose which you have set in this life is accomplished, essentially that is the end of your life. If we only have our purpose associated with material successes, the moment we have achieved those material successes, what next? Then we'll be waiting for our death. And that is no way to live our life. Then the Quran has asked us not to ignore this aspect, as our Rabb is fully aware of it all the time. Here we have to redirect focus towards responsibility in this regard, i.e. directing efforts towards rububiyyat in the world. And as I have mentioned previously as well, that whatever we are doing over here in terms of our striving and efforts towards the system of deen, there is a deen already established in the hereafter. What is its nature, we do not know at this stage, but it is definitely for the developed selves according to the Quran. So that means if our self has developed here in pursuit of the system of deen, and even if deen is not established within the short span of our life, we will be fit to go into the deen of the hereafter. How will this be achieved? Through targeted actions. We can discern two aspects from this part. Firstly, Allah wishes to know what do we do in this regard. And secondly, we need to keep employing our cognitive and physical potentials on this path. Now, finally, recap some salient aspects of Surah Hud. With verse 123, we came to the end of Surah Hud, but over here, I've gone through some salient aspects of Surah Hud, which we have covered previously as well. The Quran provides answers to all questions arising in the human mind as it is from Allah, the creator of the universe, including man, who is all-wise, all-knowing, Ghafoor, Rahim, Aziz, Hamid, Majid, Kabir, Basir. These are some of the attributes, the divine attributes, which we have covered previously in this surah. This is noted to let Momineen know that they are never alone in their efforts on the path of deen. Of course, all these divine attributes we should acquire and manifest as well. The fountainhead of all physical life on earth is water, and Allah has control on every aspect of life, i.e., His laws help us to understand the functioning of all aspects of His creation. There is one point over here that all those questions arising in our mind, it is related to human psyche, that those questions which arise in our mind, we can find an answer within the guidance of Allah in relation to our self-development. And we have seen so far that in some aspects we have compared with the psychology, modern psychology as well, and we see that what is explained in the Quran does take care of our psychological side. Man is provided with choice and intent, which makes him responsible for his deeds, and worldly life is designed in such a way that the outcomes of balanced deeds become established. This aspect is linked to the continuity of human life beyond physical death. Next point is, apparently events in the human world occur at random. And these appear at random, those who do not have understanding of the Quran, and they do not look at the world events in the light of the Quran. This is not correct. The Quran helps us to view the finer aspects of every event in the human world. When we say finer aspects, it means not only the physical side of these events, but we also can know the psychic side of those events as well, i.e., those human beings with what kind of mind they are acting on that. What was in their mind and what were they thinking when they carried out those events, and helps to guide us through this maze by removing darknesses through the light of its guidance. Continuing with the summary, hence Momineen need to tread this journey of life using the Quranic light with patience, focus, steadfastness, and by staying united. Very important, this aspect. I will expand it slightly more with a few sentences, that essentially life of the hereafter is of those whose selves have developed. That is, those who are Momineen and Salihin and Momineen and the Muttaqeen as declared by the Quran. So if these people haven't developed any affinity in this world, how are they going to come together in the next life? So if I do not have affinity for other Momineen who are on this path already, and we together are progressing from this life, how are we going to be together in the hereafter if we fail to come together here, if our hearts do not unite here? If when we united as well, our hearts don't stay together and we keep getting distracted right and left, then how are we going to be together in the hereafter? And Allah is a witness on that. And that is an important point which we should keep in mind all the time. And that keeps us motivated as well. If the Quran is followed together as guided and directed, then signs will start to materialize within the human self and in the outer world with the passage of time. The only condition is not to give up that path defined by Allah. If you remember, Quran has said in one of the verses we just covered, in which it says that we will put together all jinn and ins in hell together. So if our hearts are not united here, then obviously we will be with someone who created problems here, who had differences here. And this is a very subtle point which we should keep in mind and think through it again and again, that where we wish to end up. At the start of this new journey, doubts and suspicions may arise, and the way to overcome these is to establish the truth of the Quran in the heart and mind by deep reflection on its contents. Remember, no human being can produce anything like the Quran, as human intellect simply cannot know something for which it has no knowledge. The Quran contains the complete code for the system of being, and we have to convince ourselves about it. It's not just acceptance at face value, like most people do. In order to obtain the results, it must never be contaminated by human thought. Then the Quran explains to Momineen that striving on the path of Allah always leads to success in the long run. And long run means to keep treading on it for the rest of our life till the time comes to say goodbye to this world. And since life does not end with death, hence great rewards await them in the life of the hereafter as well. Waiting for this is part of developing ourselves. And that is how we should view it. Because if we view it like that, then journey becomes easier and easier with the passage of time. Now, again, continuing with some more points. After mentioning essentials, Surah Hud then covers the accounts of 5 nations from the past in some detail. Firstly, details of the people of the messenger Nuh are given. This nation had created serious imbalance by dividing people into various classes. Those in power despised those in the lower class. The messenger Nuh used to draw their attention towards equality as human beings and the intrinsic respect and dignity with which each child of Adam is born. He passed on the message of Wahi to his community. However, only some poor and weak human beings in the society listened to the guidance of Allah. Thus, a small Jamaat of Momineen emerged. I put poor and weak inverted commas. That was the view of the rich people. Otherwise, they were equal human beings like other human beings. This continued for a long time, and ultimately a stage arrived in the functioning of the law of requital and the law of respite, where the Quran concludes that no more people were going to come to the way of Allah. We've gone through this account previously. At that stage, Nuh built an ark to save himself and the Momineen from the impending flood. Ultimately, the flood arrived as forecasted, and Nuh, together with Momineen, were saved, while the rest who rejected the guidance of Allah were drowned. Next, under the accounts of nations, next is the account of the people of the messenger Hud, who conveyed the guidance of Allah to his nation. These people had established a system whose most evil side was the use of inordinate power against the weak in the society, and hence keeping them under severe subjugation. The messenger admonished them and invited them to establish the system where the laws of Allah are obeyed, so that balance is returned to the society. However, the powerful and rich rejected this, and the society was destroyed through a windstorm. The messenger and Momineen were saved from the destruction as per the Mashiach of Allah. Next, following this account is the story of the messenger Saleh. His nation had also transgressed the laws of Allah and had established a grossly unbalanced system where the land resources were employed unjustly. The poor had limited access to pastures and water sources for their flocks of animals. The messenger Saleh ultimately managed to strike a deal to allow a she-camel to freely roam around as a symbol of this mutual agreement. However, the wicked went against the deal and killed this she-camel. This ended the time of respite for these people, and they were caught in a severe earthquake. The messenger Saleh and Momineen were saved from this destruction. Going to the next account, the account of the messenger Lut comes next. Though the story starts with the arrival of messengers at the house of the messenger Ibrahim, its subsequent part relates to what happened to the people of the messenger Lut. These people were deeply immersed in the practice disapproved by Allah of homosexuality and had now managed to cross the time of respite. These messengers of Allah met with the messenger Lut and told him to leave the area in the night, as the people of his town were going to be destroyed through a volcanic eruption in the morning. Consequently, Lut and Momineen left the place at night, and the people were destroyed in the early morning. Next, the Quran refers to the people of the messenger Shuaib, who also passed the message of Allah on to his nation. This nation was doing injustice through misappropriation of weights and measurements in their business affairs. The messenger warned them about this evil practice and told them in clear terms that this conduct of theirs will invite the wrath of Allah as per the law of requital. Continuing with this account of nations, the people in power rejected the warning of the messenger Shuaib, thinking they cannot be held accountable for their evil deeds. This state of affairs continued for many years, and ultimately the outcome of their deeds caught up with them as per the law of requital of Allah. So it is important that this struggle was not for 1 year or 2 years. Whole of their life was spent on this struggle. This ended their time of respite, and they became due for an early demise from this world. They were destroyed through an earthquake, and the messenger Shuaib and Momineen were saved as per the law of Mashiach of Allah. After this account, the Quran mentions the messenger Musa and his confrontation with Pharaoh and his cohorts. However, this is done in a passing reference in a few verses. Allah did not do injustice to any one of these people. It is human beings themselves who do injustice to themselves and thus become eligible for their loss and destruction in this life of theirs. In general terms, then, the Quran points our attention to this fact that this life of ours is a very serious matter, and we need to hold ourselves accountable for our thoughts and deeds. When we are made aware of the guidance of Allah, i.e. the Quran, we need to pay attention to its value system so that we benefit from this life collectively and the life of the hereafter. Now, having gone through these accounts of the nations and, of course, previous verses which we have covered, I put some thoughts together on common thread in all these accounts of the past nations. The rich and powerful had gained control of these nations, and they had decided to transgress the laws of Allah. This transgression led to the creation of imbalances in the society. Why do the rich and powerful gain control in any society? This happens when no Jamaat-e-Momineen exists there who can act on the permanent value of promote good and forbid evil. And this is the state in which we find ourselves. We cannot complain because there is no Jamaat-e-Momineen, and if there exists a Jamaat-e-Momineen as of today, then they are still very weak and they need to strengthen their own selves. As and when the messengers of Allah arrived in their society, it used to be in a pretty bad state morally, and imbalances existed in every aspect of their society due to the man-made laws. So there were man-made laws wherever the messengers appeared on the scene. Those in power did not wish to reform as it went against their vested interests. But batil cannot continue indefinitely in the human world. Such situations then invite human intervention as per the laws of Allah. These messengers were human beings just like us, and the issues they faced are the same as we also find these in today's world. Irrespective of the technology in today's world, the basic human being still remains the same. Their interrelations still remain the same. Technology does not change basic human values related to managing human affairs at a fundamental level. We can easily connect all these wrongs happening in today's world despite remarkable achievements in the field of science and technology. Has this in any way changed mutual human relations at a fundamental level? Not at all. And finally, the last slide, there is one difference here. These messengers received the wahi of Allah themselves directly, and then they followed its direction after having iman in it. While in our case, we have received the complete Quran containing the wahi of Allah, and we now have to feel the need for it. Then accept iman, understand it together with others, and then start to follow its procedure. So if any one of us is looking for a messenger to arrive with the wahi, forget it, nobody is going to come. It is we human beings who have to sort out our own mess. Hence, fundamentally, Allah's wahi remains the same, and His laws are still applicable just as these were applicable then. Allah is still present to ensure His laws do not fail in their efficacy, and the law of requital does favor, inverted commas, Jamaat-e-Momineen, as it always did. I put it under inverted commas that because we understand law of requital and we hold ourselves accountable. The human beings who hold themselves accountable after acquiring iman, the law of requital favors them. That is the way it works because we become extremely conscious of it. Since Wahi goes against the desires of those who are in power, hence they oppose any efforts to establish the system of deen. This opposition helps to strengthen the iman of those who wish to continue following the path of Allah. Those who are not fully convinced leave and go elsewhere. And we have experienced it. People come and people go because they are impatient. They don't want to be on a path which they are not sure whether it is going to bring glad tidings for them or not. And Allah doesn't need them. This path doesn't need them. Quran doesn't need them. Quran needs those who have istiqamat, who have sabr, and who are fully focused on the cause of Allah. Only those remain on this path together who have understood the guidance and the importance of remaining steadfast on this path. This leads to the formation of a Jamaat of Momineen, and if these people stay united together and keep strengthening their conviction, gradually their understanding of the system of deen improves. And I have come to the end of this presentation, and it has to be continued because we haven't reached the next stage of our coming together. So we'll wait for that. Thanks for your time and for sharing this today. Please feel free to share it with your contacts. You may like to subscribe for future talks related to the Quranic system of deen.